name is Mitch Turner and I'm the director of London's Little Venice Cake Company. I've been making and baking cakes for over 20 years. I'm really excited to introduce you to my fourth book, Mitch Turner's Cake Masterclass. I'm going to share with you my very special rich fruit cake recipe, which revolutionises rich fruit cakes. The first element to start with is all the dried vine fruits, which I've got in here: sultanas, raisins, currants, naturally coloured glacé cherries, some glacé ginger. And it's really important that the dried fruit steeps for a good 6 hours overnight if it can, to really absorb the flavours of the brandy and to plump up all the vine fruits. So I've weighed these all into a bowl and I'm going to pour over the brandy and then stir all those fruits up together. And you can feel at this stage they feel quite brittle, they're quite dry, there's lots of movement between. But by the time these fruits have absorbed all the brandy, they will be lovely and plump and moist and just hold all of that lovely flavour in the cake when it's baked. One of the challenges I always face is that people say to me, I don't really like fruitcake. And what that invariably means is they don't like the kind of fruitcake that they're used to. Generally summed up by being a slightly burnt, caramelised, very, very dry flavoured cake that's sort of chewy and a bit gritty to eat. The lovely thing about this recipe is because it's a melted technique and we're using the vine fruits that are really being soaked up and plumped up with all the brandy beforehand, it creates a cake that's lovely and moist, packed full of flavour, packed full of fruit. So I'm going to cover that now with a clean cloth and leave that to steep for a good 6 hours. In my saucepan here I've placed the unsalted butter and the dark muscovado sugar, and as this gently starts to melt it'll form the basis of the melted recipe that I'm going to add the treacle and the eggs to, off the heat, and then fold in the dry ingredients and finally those lovely vine fruits that have been steeping. With the butter and sugar nicely melted, it's important to transfer this now into a large bowl, because when we add the eggs we want to make sure that they don't start to cook. In my bowl now I've got my lovely melted butter and sugar, into which I'm going to add a nice big dollop of treacle. And 5 eggs. Although we're not adding any air from the eggs by sort of increasing it in that respect, the eggs themselves work as a binding agent, so that once we add the flour and the fruits, it helps to hold the cake together to give it good cohesion once it's baked. The eggs also act as a very good emulsifying agent to bring the butter and the sugar and treacle all together. Okay, so now to add the dry ingredients. I've got the flour and all the lovely spices. I'm not sieving it necessarily to add air at this stage, it's more to ensure that all the spices and the raising agents are evenly mixed and that there's no lumps left. And then fold that all together. Now you'll see that this is much more of a batter rather than a creamed mixture for stirring in the fruits, which is what's so different about this recipe compared to other fruitcake recipes. And it's this basis that will ensure that when the cake is baked it has a lovely sort of dense texture, nice firm flat top, and that the cake itself is really packed with fruit. Just going to add a couple of drops of vanilla. And then we're ready to stir in all those lovely moist vine fruits. And you see these have all really plumped up and look lovely and lush. And I'm going to add those into the mixture. All the liquid goes in as well. And you see it really sort of holds together. So I'm just going to simply transfer this now into the tin. And it's amazing how much mixture you need that's going to pack down once that's baked to create a cake that's around 3 inches in depth. So that comes literally right up to the top of that cake tin. Flatten the surface, make sure that the fruits are nicely covered with the mixture. And now it needs to bake in the oven at a very low temperature for a very long time. And here is the cake, freshly baked from the oven. smells absolutely delicious. What's important now is that this cake cools in its tin overnight, out-turn tomorrow, and then it'll be ready to marzipan ice and decorate.